If you want the Raiders to fire Josh McDaniels, I want you to hit that like button. Hell, I want you to be like Buddy Bear. I want you to create 3 accounts and like it from all your accounts, because to me, there is not enough likes that could happen on this video. I want to try to break my record. The most liked video of all time I've ever put out on the Raiders Report, 10,000 likes. Can we get 10,000 likes on this video? That way, maybe it'll finally prove that the Raiders need to fire Josh McDaniels. Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and our Josh McDaniels replacement video is presented by Panda Sups. Panda Sups is owned by a die-hard Raider fan, and he's been hooking up the nation with awesome deals, and if you want the deal that I got for you, use code FOCUS to get some new tropics. It's like totally locks you in to the game plan. Honestly, I wish Josh McDaniels would have had some new tropics, because then he would have been able to do the simple math of 15 plus 8, carry the 1. Oh, I can get to 23 points. I can. That's what I need. Focus. And hopefully you guys are focused on some of these coaching replacements. So what I decided to do here is this. I wanted to look at some offensive, and then I also want to look at some defensive-minded coaches. I don't have these ranked in any particular order, and the list is going to change as the year goes on because, spoiler alert, I can't look into the future, or else I would have been able to tell you that the Raiders are going to lose 2 games in a row. But I can promise you this. I'm going to end up doing another Josh McDaniels replacement video. I can almost promise you. But the thing is this. Just because the Raiders, if they move on from him, they're not going to bring in a new head coach this season. You're going to promote an interim head coach. So to me, when I look at the entire overall, we'll call it coaching roster, these are your top 4 candidates to be the interim head coach if the Raiders decide to move on from Josh McDaniels. I think Patrick Graham is probably the top name. You got to think the DC, the OC. It's probably where this team would end up going. My vote would be Carmen Bricillo. I thought another interesting name would have been Rob Leonard. I probably could have put him on here. But then the other guy that I do think is a sneaky sleeper choice would be Edgar Bennett, the wide receiver coach, who's got over 30 years of experience. And I want y'all to hit the subscribe button. I've been talking about a long time. When would I ever do a 24-hour straight live stream? It's been something that I've discussed. It's been something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I'm going to make you guys a deal right now. When the Raiders fire Josh McDaniels, not if, when, because it's going to happen. Not saying this year, but it's going to happen. When the Raiders fire Josh McDaniels, we're going to celebrate live, and I'm going to be on this show for 24 straight hours. I don't want you to miss it. I want you to hit that subscribe button. I want you to turn on those notifications, because if you thought what we did for trading for Davante Adams was wild, oh, man, buckle up, Buttercup, because we are going to party. We're going to blow the roof off of this place when the Raiders finally realize, yeah, shit, we hired the wrong guy. So coming up here, the offensive-minded candidates that I want the Raiders to potentially look at and go out and try to get in 2024 when, if they decide to fire Josh McDaniels. First name is offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and it's Ben Johnson. Johnson joined the Lions in 2019 as an offensive quality control coach and has really worked his way up a lot of boards in terms of some of the top candidates that you're going to see. 1 year of OC experience. The Lions in 2022 had a 4th overall in yards, and he showed a very new offense. If I want a head coach, I want somebody that's younger, right? He's 36 years old. He has the ability to transform, and here's my favorite word with coaches, make adjustments. I want somebody that can make adjustments, and Ben Johnson has been able to show that he knows how to make adjustments. I also think he'd fit really well with Dave Ziegler if they also decided to keep Ziegler. Let's go to the next name here, Shan Waldron, the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, and I do think that there's good options that you're going to see on this show that if it was up to me, I would only fire McDaniels and I would actually keep Ziegler. And the only way that that's going to work to me is if there's a previous relationship, and we know how important that is to this organization. So I do think that Waldron is an interesting option because he coached with the Patriots from 2008 and 2009. I know what some of y'all are thinking, but Mitch, I don't want any more Patriot guys, this and that, this and that. I hear you. But I also look at the entire coaching list that we have. And if you're going to keep Dave Ziegler, you're probably going to keep a lot of the other things that you have in place. So then you probably could end up bringing in a guy from New England. I'm not saying it's what they're going to do. It's just something to think about. And he's also done a phenomenal job with Geno Smith. I need somebody that can take a quarterback like Geno, who, no disrespect to Geno, no, the way that we look at Geno Smith now compared to the way we did 2 years ago, I do think Shane Waldron deserves a lot of credit for that. Let's go to another name here, and this is going to light up some eyes, okay? Lincoln Riley. This is only, and I mean the only way humanly possible that you bring in Lincoln Riley is if the Raiders have the #1 overall pick. That's it, because that's the only way you're getting him. I look at Lincoln Riley and I say, hey, remember that time I gave John Gruden the 10-year, $100 million deal? Well, if you bring Caleb Williams to Las Vegas, you're the head coach, he's your quarterback, I'm going to make you the highest paid head coach in NFL history. That's my pitch to Lincoln Riley. He's doing a lot of great stuff out there at USC, and I know there's probably a lot of USC fans watching the show right now. They're like, ah, shit, I don't know if I want Lincoln Riley to leave. I hear you, but the only way that you're going to do it is if Caleb Williams, you got the #1 overall pick, and the only way that you're bringing in a big fish is with a lot of money, and Mark Davis has the ability to go out and do it. Now, we still got some more candidates coming up here on the show, but what kind of head coach do you want next? Do you want an offensive-minded, or do you want a defensive-minded coach? And this is actually going to be the pinned comment on today's show, so you're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break, so I want you to scroll on down and let me know, what kind of head coach do you want for the Silver and Black? Offensive-minded or defensive-minded? Let's go to the next candidate here for my McDaniels replacements. And when I sat down and thought about this list, there was one name that I knew if I did not put him on the show, I would have a bunch of people coming after me. And it's got to be Jim Harbaugh, head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. And Harbaugh was the name that I was really, really pulling for the last time this whole coaching cycle happened, because Harbaugh, Mark Davis, they have a phenomenal relationship. Now, I do think one of the reasons why they decided to go with McDaniels and Ziegler, because they wanted to have that 50-50 split. John Gruden had way too much control when it was Gruden and Mayock. Gruden was 51% say, and then Mayock had 49%. The reason, though, why I like Harbaugh is he's obviously got the connections, but Josh McDaniels can be the greatest offensive mind in the world, right? Like, and some people really think that he is the greatest offensive mind out there, and I actually think that he is a good offensive mind. I know, it's crazy to say, but he can't lead a group of men, and that's always been my #1 thing that I'll always say. If you don't have a head coach that can be a leader of men, it's not going to work. In terms of X's and O's, Josh McDaniels probably runs circles around Rich Bisaccia, but Rich Bisaccia could look at that entire team, and he could get that team to believe, and that's what a head coach needs to do, and I think that's what Harbaugh does really well, and I also know that Harbaugh's had some success at the college and the NFL level. So Jim Harbaugh, you make the list. Let's go to another guy here, offensive coordinator / QB coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, Brian Johnson. And a lot of times what ends up happening every single offseason is you take some good teams and you pick some coaches from that. But Johnson has worked magic, I think, with Jalen Hurts' development. Another quarterback, like I said earlier, with Geno Smith. The way that we talk about Jalen Hurts now compared to the way that we did just 2 years ago, obviously he's had some good coaches around him, and this is going to be his first as an NFL OC, so I'm curious to see how he continues to grow. I'll admit he's probably the lowest name that I have on here in terms of offensive-minded guys, but this is a quarterback-driven league. He's played QB before. He's worked with other quarterbacks that have had some success, and the fact that it is a QB-driven league, and if you move on from McDaniels, I'm going to imagine you're going to bring in your own QB. That's where I think Brian Johnson could at least be an intriguing option. Let's go to another name here. It's Mike Kafka, and for a second I thought this was Marshall but bald, but hey, Kafka had the opportunity to learn underneath Andy Reid. That is a big-time win for me. I think Andy Reid is one of the greatest offensive-minded head coaches that the NFL has ever seen. Now he's learning underneath Brian Daboll, which, again, for those of you that watched the show back in 2022, Brian Daboll was the guy that I wanted the Raiders to hire, not Josh McDaniels. And Kafka, I do think, deserves credit for getting Daniel Jones paid a little bit. I mean, Daniel is an interesting QB. The fact that he got to learn with Patrick Mahomes a little bit, interesting offensive-minded guy, young overall dude. So Mike Kafka makes the list. So coming up next here on the Raiders Report for my Josh McDaniels replacements, I got to look at the defensive-minded candidates now. I know that there's going to be some big-time names that you're going to see, especially one. But to me, there's going to be Raider fans that want the offensive mind. There's going to be Raider fans that want the defensive mind. So to me, I try to give you a little bit of everything. That's what the Raiders Reports here is all about. Before I get into those defensive-minded candidates, I got this product right now from Panda Sups that I really want you all to go out and try. How many people, and you don't raise your hand if you want. I always hit like my afternoon crashing period around like 2 or 3 o'clock. You take a scoop of nootropics from Panda Sups, I promise you're going to be more awake mentally than you can even imagine. Sometimes when you drink a lot of caffeine, you drink too much and your body crashes. Nootropics locks you in. If you're a gamer and you're playing games late at night, lock in with a scoop of nootropics. If you're a college student, a high school student, hell, if you're an adult and you're still going to school and you need to be able to lock in because you had a long work day, take a scoop of nootropics. It's going to lock you in. You're going to be more laser focused than you ever have. This might surprise you. I take nootropics before shows, so that's how I get locked in. Use code FOCUS for 25% off at pandasups.com. That link's going to be available for you guys down in the comments and in the description of today's show, and it's also owned by a big-time Raider fan, and I know he would definitely appreciate it. All right, so now look at some of these defensive-minded coaches, and the top name on here is going to be Dan Quinn. Quinn is arguably the best defensive-minded coach in the NFL, at least in my opinion. He's done wonders with this Dallas Cowboys defense over the past few years. He was the Falcons head coach from 2015 to 2020, and I look at Dan Quinn, and I'll admit, I know this is a head coaching video. I do wonder if some people are built more to be coordinators than head coaches, but I also believe that certain people deserve second chances, and to me, Dan Quinn deserves a second chance to be a head coach in the NFL. I also think that he can rally and get a bunch of people to play for him. I might make the argument that being a DC for the Dallas Cowboys it's the best coordinator job out there. Hell, I might make the argument that being the coordinator for the Cowboys is probably better than some head coaching jobs out there in the NFL. But I do think that he's going to get another shot, and if you want to build this defense, this is the number one guy that you got to keep in mind and go out and hire. Let's go to another name here. It's Brian Flores, DC for the Minnesota Vikings, and kind of what I said earlier about an option. If you want to keep Dave Ziegler, but you just want to fire McDaniels, Brian Flores might be the top name on this list from a defensive-minded standpoint. I was surprised that Miami moved on from him from 2019 to 2021 because when Flores took over, you can make the argument that he was taking over one of the worst football teams in the league and was actually competitive. Like, he was 24-25, I believe, was his coaching record. But from where that team was compared to where he left, was very, very shocking that they decided to move on from him. He's also worked with the New England Patriots from 2008 to 2018, so he has that connection there, not only with Dave Ziegler, but a lot of other coaches that are on this team, especially like a guy like Rob Leonard with the defensive line. I want a lot of cohesion, and Brian Flores would be able to bring that. Let's go to the next guy here, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals, and I practiced his name before the show, Lou Anarumo. All right, Coop's giving me a thumbs up here. And I'm a big fan of Lou, 56 years old. One of the things that I love is Lou's defense has held the Chiefs to 24 points or less in their last 3 games. And some people might say, oh, it's 24 points. If you're able to hold Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense in big-time games to 24 or less, maybe Lou knows something that a lot of other people don't. He also took over the Bengals and defense, and we talk a lot about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. That offense is spectacular. But when he first took over, the Bengals defense was ranked like 26th in the NFL, and every single year it's gotten better and better and better and better and better. They've gotten continuously better, and we'll see how much better they continually get this season, maybe if the offense isn't as well. But he's been a DC for 5 years, and he's always trying to evolve his defense and give you different looks. It's basically the complete opposite of what Patrick Graham's trying to do right now. Let's go to another name here, and it's, again, a name that could be an interesting option if you decide to keep Ziegler. And this guy might have the least amount of experience, but I'm really starting to be able to wrap my mind around the idea of I like coaches who have past playing experience. And if you told me right now, Mitch, who's the next Mike Vrabel head coach in the NFL? I think it's Jerod Mayo. He interviewed with the Raiders back in 2022, played with the Patriots from 2008 to 2015, but the Titans are not a super talented team. But the one thing that you got to give Tennessee credit for is they play their heart out every single week. They are a tough freaking football team, and they go out there and they compete. Why? Because they take on the personification of your head coach. I think one of the reasons why the Raiders are a soft team right now is because listen to when Josh McDaniels talks. He just sounds like When I hear McDaniels talk, I think I'm just yelling at my dog Chuck. He's got his ears down all the time. He's got his tail between the legs. I'm starting to wonder if McDaniels took a shit on the podium before he walked up there, because he looks like my dog after I yelled at him when he was a puppy for taking a shit on the floor. You bring in a guy like Jerod Mayo, they're going to go out there and they're going to let the big dogs eat. That's why I like Mayo. Let's go to another name here. Raheem Morris. Another defensive-minded coach for the Los Angeles Rams, has bounced around, done some different stuff, been coaching in the NFL and college football since 2002. The Buccaneers head coach from 2009 and 2011. This is another dude that I do think deserves another shot to at least get a chance to be a head coach in the NFL. Also, he's worked with both sides of the football, so it could be a potentially interesting hire where you're like, I don't know if I want an offensive-minded, I don't know if I want a defensive-minded, but Morris has been able to work in recent years with very, very successful coaching staffs and very successful personnel overall. All right, so those are my Josh McDaniels replacements. Who do you want the Raiders to hire as their next head coach? I don't know when the Raiders end up firing McDaniels. I don't know if, right? When I say I don't know if, I don't think it happens this year unless it's an absolute dumpster fire. But I do think that sooner rather than later, you have to make the move because it's not going to happen with McDaniels. So, who's going to be the head coach that you want the Raiders to hire next? I can't wait to see what you guys come up with down in the comments. Before we get out of here, here's one more time the offensive candidates that I have to potentially replace Josh McDaniels. Again, I want to preface the Lincoln Riley is only on here as if the Raiders have the number 1 overall pick and you're able to get Caleb Williams, or you figure out a way to get to the number 1 pick, go get Caleb Williams, and then you throw the Brinks truck at Lincoln Riley. From the defensive side, Dan Quinn's the number 1 dude. I like Brian Flores, Jerod Mayo. I think Lou, again, is another interesting name. And then we're going to throw in Raheem Morris. There is a lot of good candidates out there, all of which I believe are an upgrade over Josh McDaniels.